A montage of Tasha Ellison working 2 jobs by dawn, comforting her restless girls at night, and feeling the weight of her family's judgment. Then the moment her lawyer calls with news that will upend everything. Tasha Ellison wiped down the last booth at closing time, her shoulders stiff and aching from a 12-hour shift under fluorescent lights. The rusted bell above the diner door jingled one final time, sending an echo through the empty dining room. She switched off the neon "open" sign, collected her apron, and slid onto a bar stool at the counter for a moment's rest. Her reflection in the streaked mirror revealed dark circles under eyes that had seen too many early mornings and too many sleepless nights. By the time she locked the back door, the clock on the wall read 11:07 p.m. The parking lot lay deserted except for her red sedan, its engine humming as she slid behind the wheel. In the silence of the drive home, Tasha rehearsed the morning ahead, wake the girls by 5:30, pack peanut butter sandwiches and yogurt into their school bags, and then make the long trek to the gas station on the edge of town. Not for work, yet, but to check the locks, turn on the lights, and make sense of what her late father had left behind. Pulling into her driveway, she was greeted by 2 pairs of small, sleepy eyes. 7-year-old twins, Maya and Maya, sat cross-legged on the front porch, blankets wrapped around slender shoulders. They had been waiting up, as they did most nights, until she came home. "Mommy," they mumbled, voices thick with sleep. Tasha forced a weary smile, knelt and smoothed the curls framing each of their faces. Their warmth eased a fraction of her fatigue, but the knot of worry in her chest refused to loosen. Inside, the kitchen light revealed the aftermath of a day she had barely had time to live. Piles of dishes stacked in the sink, half-folded laundry on the table, and the quiet hum of the refrigerator. She flicked on the coffee pot, its ancient relay clicking awake, then packed lunches with the precision of an assembly line: 2 sandwiches, 2 yogurts, 2 juice boxes. Every movement felt heavy, as if gravity itself was pressing her down. As the girls finished their oatmeal, Simone's voice, taunting and pitiless, echoed in Tasha's mind. "You do all that for a run-down gas station? Get over yourself." She shoved the thought away, focusing instead on tucking the girls into the car seats and fastening their seatbelts. Even as she buckled her own, the knot of uncertainty tightened. What would tomorrow bring when she inherited something no one else wanted? By 6 a.m., they were on the road to school. The sky was still edged with starlight, and the world felt suspended between night and dawn. Tasha drove in silence, listening to the soft breathing of twin daughters lost in dreams. Ahead lay the gas station, her legacy, her burden, and perhaps the key to a new chapter none of them could yet imagine. The church was unusually quiet for a funeral. Sunlight filtered through stained-glass windows, casting patterns of deep crimson and violet across polished oak pews. Tasha Ellison sat near the back, her hands folded in her lap, stomach knotted like a tightly wound spring. Across the aisle, Simone and Darrell exchanged hushed comments and sympathetic glances, an anxious audience awaiting the final act of their father's life. Mourners in neatly pressed suits drifted in, neighbors, a few distant cousins, and the preacher, whose booming voice felt too loud in the hushed space. Tasha thought she spotted Mrs. Porter from the diner, clutching a box of tissues. Even strangers offered her polite nods, pity flickering in their eyes as they recognized the single mother who worked nights and still made time to attend school recitals. At the front, a simple walnut casket lay closed beneath a cascade of white lilies. The preacher's eulogy spoke of Albert Ellison's quiet kindness, how he fixed broken lawnmowers for free, how his laugh was a rumble like distant thunder. Tasha closed her eyes, recalling her father's gentle hands, guiding her through spark-spitting engine parts in his cramped workshop. He never asked for thanks. He loved that dusty corner of the garage more than any accolade. When the final amen was spoken, guests shuffled forward. One by one they approached the casket, pausing, bowing their heads. Simone stepped first. Her blouse was crisp, her posture impeccable. She laid a single red rose atop the lid and met Tasha's eyes with a tight smile that didn't reach her lips. Darrell followed, his legal pad in hand. He whispered something soft, too soft for Tasha to catch, and patted her shoulder before stepping back. Finally, it was Tasha's turn. The polished wood felt cold beneath her fist as she laid her own wilted bouquet atop. The lilies. Memories unfolded in her mind. The day her father taught her to change a tire by lantern light. The nights he stayed awake, stitching her doll's torn dress. She traced the silver locket he'd always worn against his heart, worn thin by decades of use, and pressed her forehead to the casket. Outside, the late afternoon sky had turned steely gray. A stiff breeze rustled the hymn sheets in people's hands. Simone and Darrell gathered a few attendees beneath the courthouse steps for the reading of the will, their voices low but urgent. Tasha stood alone on the grass, watching her siblings disappear into the courthouse entrance, heart thudding with a mix of dread and determination. Her father's sacrifices had anchored her life, keeping her grounded when everything threatened to slip away. Simone and Darrell would judge her, pity her, perhaps even abandon her now. But Tasha drew a steadying breath. Whatever tomorrow brought, no matter how small, no matter how derided, she would face it head on. She belonged to her father's legacy as much as her siblings did, and she would not be overshadowed. The twins tugged at her skirt, their small hands warm against her ankles. Tasha looked down at Maya and Mia and felt a fierce surge of resolve. She would carry her father's memory and her own dignity forward into whatever future awaited them. Late morning sunlight slanted through the courthouse windows as Tasha joined Simone and Darrell in the small attorney's conference room. The air smelled of old leather and polished mahogany. A faded attorney-at-law plaque on the desk bore her father's name, Albert J. Ellison, an ironic touch, since he'd rarely spoken of any dealings beyond fixing engines and balancing the household books. Ms. Caldwell, the family lawyer, sat behind her desk with a thin folder in front of her. Her silver hair was pulled into a neat bun, and her wire-rimmed glasses glinted as she cleared her throat. Tasha's heart pounded so loudly she imagined it might echo off the paneled walls. Simone perched on the edge of a guest chair, legs crossed, phone balanced on her knee as she scrolled through messages. Darrell leaned back with arms folded, every inch the polished corporate man, though his jaw was clenched tight. "Thank you for coming," Ms. Caldwell began. "Your father did not leave a great many instructions, but he was very precise when it came to his will." She glanced at her notes, then at each sibling in turn. "I will read the distributions as he specified." Darrell exhaled audibly. Simone offered Tasha a sympathetic smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Tasha forced her shoulders to relax. She'd anticipated this moment for years, a slip of paper that confirmed what everyone else already assumed. Nothing for her. Ms. Caldwell cleared her throat again. First, to Simone Ellison, $25,000, to be dispersed in a single payment. Simone's lips curved into a small, autopilot smile. Next, to Darrell Ellison, $25,000. Darrell's posture relaxed minutely, as if the name of the game had finally been revealed. Tasha's throat went dry. She clutched the edge of her chair. $25,000, she thought. Enough to pay bills for 6 months. Maybe. And finally, Ms. Caldwell said, eyes softening as she paused, "The remainder of Mr. Ellison's estate goes to Natasha Ellison, his daughter, his only caretaker these past years." Simone's phone slipped from her hand to the floor. Darrell's brow shot up. Tasha stared, stunned. The remainder sounded like a catch-all phrase. Default spare change, likely nothing more than old furniture or loose tools. Simone's voice fluttered, brittle with forced cheer. "Oh, Natasha, how thoughtful." Darrell leaned forward. "That gas station on Route 47. Your inheritance, Tasha." His words thumped in her ears like a hammer. The room seemed to tilt. Tasha closed her eyes, picturing Grandpa Albert's dusty workshop, the place she'd last seen his legacy. A heavy set of keys hanging by the door, a rusted pump handle lying forgotten in the corner. She had expected lack, but this was tangible. Ms. Caldwell snapped the folder shut. "That concludes the reading. Should any of you wish to contest the will, the deadline is 60 days. Silence stretched between the three siblings. Then Simone rose first, gathering her purse as if fleeing a storm. Darrell followed, eyes flicking to Tasha with something that hovered between envy and disbelief. Tasha remained seated a moment longer, absorbing the weight of what had been handed to her. Not cash, but a weathered storefront and a lifetime of unanswered questions. As she stood, she felt the first spike of hope and the tremor of every challenge yet to come. The moment the courthouse doors closed behind them, Simone let her smirk, spread like wildfire. She spun toward Tasha, voice pitched for maximum insistence. "Honestly, Tash, this is charity. Dad never ran a business, just an old pump and a leaky tank. Take the 25 grand and walk away." Darrell leaned against the stone facade, arms folded, legs crossed at the ankle. He nodded, eyes cold. "She's right," he said crisply. "Liquidate it. You know nothing about gasoline margins or zoning laws. We'll split whatever's left." Tasha's mouth went dry. The late afternoon sun glanced off Simone's polished nails as she tapped one impatiently against her thigh. A crowd of late-day courthouse visitors streamed past, oblivious to the family drama playing out on the steps. Inside, Tasha felt herself shrinking, becoming two things at once: the caretaker daughter who'd stayed behind and the single mom trying to keep her twins fed. She could almost hear her girls' sleepy faces floating in her mind, their small hands tugging at her. Would they be safer with a pile of cash or with their mother's stubborn refusal? "Dad left me the station," Tasha said, voice low but steady. "It's not charity. It's his choice. I'm not selling." Simone's laugh cut the air, high, brittle. "Your choice? Don't kid yourself. You'll sink 10 grand into repairs just to get a pump to work. You'll never turn a profit." Darrell's lip curled. "There's environmental fines on that property, underground tank leaks, soil contamination. My firm handled cleanup on a site like that. Trust me, it's a money pit." Tasha pressed her hands into her coat pockets to still the tremble. She pictured the station at dusk, the chipped signage glowing like a faded promise, the silent island of asphalt framed by pines. In her father's journal, if there was one, he'd written nothing of fines or margins, only numbers she couldn't yet decipher. "I'm aware of the challenges," she said, chin lifting, "but it's mine." Simone's blue eyes narrowed. "If you want it, you'll deal with it alone. Don't come crying to us when you're mid-bankruptcy." She turned on her heel and swept down the courthouse steps. Darrell followed in her wake, offering Tasha one last look of weary superiority. Left standing amid the echo of their footsteps, Tasha swallowed hard. She pictured Simone's tailored blazer, Darrell's sleek briefcase, symbols of a world that had passed her by. And yet, in that moment, pride flared like a beacon. Alone on the stone steps, she reached into her pocket and curled her fingers around the brass key she had found the night before. It was the only tangible link to her father's silent life, and though her siblings dismissed the station as worthless, to Tasha it glowed with possibility. An inheritance she would honor, one way or another. With shoulders squared, she turned away from the courthouse and glanced toward the highway. The sun dipped low, casting the road in molten gold. Somewhere out there, behind peeling paint and rusted pumps, her future waited, and she would meet it head on. Dawn drifted in pale streaks across the dusty windshield as Tasha turned off the two-lane highway onto the gravel road leading to Albert Station. The sign, once bold red letters over white, now sagged on rusted hinges, its paint blistered and peeling. Beneath it, two broken pumps stood like sentinels abandoned to time, hoses limp and cracked. Tasha killed the engine and climbed out, boots crunching on gravel mixed with old motor oil. The air smelled of pine needles and stale gasoline. In the half-light, she noticed the creaking swing of a back door, its chain lock dangling uselessly. Then the boarded front window with a lockbox nailed tight. No welcoming glow, no hum of late model cars, just silence and shadows. Her heart thudded. This was what her siblings had dismissed as worthless, her inheritance. She ran a hand along the aluminum siding, feeling the chill where the lacquering had chipped away. Each dent and discoloration seemed to whisper of untold stories, stories her father had never shared. Tasha walked toward the main bay door. Its yellow warning stripes had faded to gray. She pushed gently. The door groaned, but held fast. Behind her, a scattering of pine cones tumbled down the roof's edge. She pressed her ear to the cool metal. Inside, she imagined her father's echoing footsteps, the click of wrenches, the soft hum of machinery. A life lived in quiet dedication. Circling the building, she found the office entrance, a single wooden door with a small frosted glass pane. The etched nameplate read Ellison Service Station in peeling gold leaf. She slid her fingers beneath the padlock and felt the familiar weight of her father's brass key. It fit perfectly. The lock clicked open with a dull thunk. Inside, dust motes danced in the slanted morning light. A heavy countertop ran. Along one wall, its formica top cracked and stained. Behind it, wall-mounted calendars from 10 years ago still hung. One marked Aunt Irene's birthday, another noting engine parts delivery, Thursday. Coffee-stained mugs sat on a chipped shelf, coffee grounds littering the floor. Tasha ran her hand along the edge of the counter and found a ledger book half buried beneath old receipts. Its pages were dog-eared, filled with neat looping script, thousands of entries she couldn't yet decipher. Every line felt like a breadcrumb to her father's hidden world. She crossed to the service bay, where rusted oil drums lined the walls, and a single workbench lay beneath a cobwebbed fluorescent light. A broken pump handle lay on the floor beside scattered wrenches, tools that had once been polished and precise. Tasha imagined her father here, kneeling in grease-stained coveralls, focused on each bolt and gasket, as if tending to a delicate heart. Stepping back into the morning chill, Tasha inhaled deeply. The station was more than corrugated metal and cracked concrete. It was her father's legacy, etched in every dent and oil stain. Despite its decay, she sensed possibility stirring beneath the dust. She closed the door softly, key turning once more in the lock. Tomorrow she would bring cleaners and contractors, but today she simply stood in the clearing light, feeling the station's quiet pulse, and for the first time in years, believing that something true had been entrusted to her. That evening, Tasha sat at the kitchen table beneath the glare of a single overhead bulb. The table groaned under the weight of her father's things, worn coveralls folded neatly, a grease-smudged toolbox, and a battered leather satchel. Maya and Mia had fallen asleep hours ago, their soft breathing a reminder of why she must unravel this mystery. With deliberate care, she unlatched the toolbox lid. Inside lay sockets and wrenches in orderly rows, a coil of frayed extension cord, and a roll of masking tape. Tasha ran her fingers along the tools. Each one bore her father's meticulous mark. Initials carved in the metal, dates scribbled on the handles. He'd treated his instruments like extensions of himself. She reached to lift a coil of tape and froze. Beneath it, a small brass key gleamed in the lamplight, its surface engraved with a pattern of interlocking triangles. It was heavier than it looked, cool to the touch, and unmistakably out of place among automotive hardware. Her breath caught. How had she missed it before? She blinked back a sudden rush of disappointment. Months of sorting through these same boxes, and she'd almost overlooked this singular piece. It felt like a message, a clue left for her alone. Tasha turned the key over in her palm. The triangle pattern reminded her of the carved cedar door in her father's garage, specifically the hidden closet he'd always told her to leave locked. She pressed her thumbnail into the key's shoulder and coaxed a few twists. There was no mechanism here, but something about its weight suggested it belonged to something important. She opened the satchel next. Inside lay a bundle of yellow documents, oil-stained photographs, and a leather-bound journal wrapped in canvas. But every strap and clasp met resistance. The satchel stayed locked, unyielding, and yet here was the key that might open it. With trembling fingers, she slid the key into a tiny clasp built into the satchel's flap. It fit perfectly. A faint click echoed in the quiet kitchen, and the flap fell open. Tasha exhaled, heart pounding as she lifted the journal free. The journal's cover was supple leather, its spine cracked with age. She opened it to the first page, where her father's neat handwriting filled every line. Dates, shorthand, references to Station X, and asset transfers. Beneath the journal lay a stack of photographs taken in places she'd never heard of. Berlin, Istanbul, obscure fuel depots with unmarked trucks circling guard towers. A sudden swell of pride and fear rose within her. Her father had led a life far beyond the gas station she'd just discovered, and now, armed with this key and his journal, she stood at the threshold of something profound, a hidden legacy he'd entrusted only to her. Tasha closed the satchel, tucking the key into her pocket. In the darkened hush of her kitchen, she felt her doubts begin to crumble. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she was ready to follow her father's path, one careful step at a time. Late the next morning, Tasha cleared the kitchen table once more, spreading her father's leather-bound journal before her like a sacred text. Sunlight poured through the window, illuminating the cracked pages and casting golden pools on the faded ink. She ran a finger along the top line, 042 STRB XFER 1182. Berlin, comms secure. Beneath it, neat loops of script detailed similar entries, dates, locations, and shorthand she couldn't yet translate. Her heart pounded like a piston in her chest. She knew this journal was the key to her father's hidden life, but first she had to unravel its code. Tasha grabbed a blank notebook and began transcribing the first few lines. She circled recurring abbreviations, STRB, KOMMG, asset, and penciled notes. Maybe Station Berlin? Communication? Asset recovery? Her mind raced through possibilities, but the entries felt like pieces of a puzzle without an edge. She paused at a pasted photograph tucked between pages. It showed Albert in military-style fatigues standing beside a nondescript fuel tanker, the caption scrawled in his handwriting, Station X, Late-Night Comms Hub. The more she looked, the more she saw. Faint grid lines on the tanker's side, a barely visible insignia. A sudden ping on her phone startled her. It was a text from Ivana Kuznetsov, her mysterious new ally. First step, locate local references. Check county archives, deeds, permits. Call me when you have something. Tasha exhaled. Even as questions swirled, who was Ivana? How did she know of the journal? Her father's methodical mind shone through. He had left instructions. By noon, Tasha drove to the county clerk's office. Under flickering fluorescent lights, she requested archival records for Albert J. Ellison's property. The clerk retrieved yellowed files, a 1978 permit for fuel storage and distribution, an inspection report from 1985 noting unusual security measures, and a stamped confidential label she couldn't ignore. Back in her car, Tasha compared dates in the journal to those documents. Each entry lined up: Berlin transfers, the 1985 inspection, even references to Asset XBR 19 coinciding with a memo about an off-site safe room. Her pulse quickened. Her father had been more than a mechanic. He'd built a covert communication hub beneath the guise of an ordinary gas station. That evening, she returned home with photocopies and fresh determination. Under the warm glow of her desk lamp, she decoded a new line: XBR-19 activation required underground node, key 042. She touched her pocket and felt the brass key's reassuring weight. It had opened the satchel. Now it would unlock the next secret. As the twins slept and the house grew still, Tasha realized her father's legacy was unfolding like a map, and she held both compass and key. Ahead lay danger, betrayal, and revelation. But in that quiet moment, with journal and documents before her, she felt something she hadn't in years: hope. Moonlight seeped through the dusty window pane of the station's back office, turning motes of dust into drifting stars. Tasha stood alone under the flicker of a single bulb, journal open in her gloved hands. The entry she'd been waiting for read: 042 STRB, beneath board, 2 turns east of Pump 2. Her breath caught. Pump 2 sat just outside the office window. Another reason this place made sense as a covert hub. She traced her finger along the journal's map, a crude sketch of the back room's floorboards, with a small X marking the spot. Tasha dropped to her knee on the threadbare rug, pulling at the edge of a loose plank near the workbench. It resisted at first, then eased upward, revealing a narrow gap. Beneath, the darkness yawned like a mouth waiting to swallow her. She swallowed. Clutching her flashlight in one hand and the brass key in the other, she slid her arm into the opening. With 2 gentle nudges, exactly as Albert's shorthand prescribed, she pushed a hidden latch. The plank slid aside completely, exposing a circular hatch fashioned from heavy metal. Its edges were cold and rough, etched with the same interlocking triangle pattern as her key. Her pulse pounded. She fitted the key into a small lock on the hatch's side. It turned smoothly. Albert had made sure only someone with his key could enter. With a low creak, the hatch swung inward, revealing a spiraling staircase coated in dust and grime. Tasha paused at the threshold. The air that rose from the shaft was stale, tinged with damp earth and something metallic, like electricity trapped underground. She flicked on her flashlight, the beam cutting a path down 10 narrow steps. Each tread groaned and threatened to give under her weight, but held firm. At the bottom, she found herself in a tunnel no wider than a coffin, its walls lined with concrete and tangled conduit. Low wires snaked along brackets, disappearing into darkness. Her light caught a faded stencil on the wall: Station X, Secure Zone. Beneath it, arrows pointed down 3 corridors, each labeled in her father's spidery handwriting: Comms, Arch, and Safe. Heart in her throat, Tasha advanced toward the comms corridor. The concrete floor gave way to metal grating, beneath which she could hear a faint hum, an echo of machines long dormant. Ahead, flickers of light danced on a wall-mounted panel dotted with empty ports, as if waiting for active cables. A sudden echo, a drip of water, made her jump. She steadied herself, recalling Albert's voice in her mind: "Trust your instincts. Every corner holds a clue." Clutching the journal to her chest, she stepped resolutely into the tunnel, determined to follow her father's path, deeper into the station's hidden heart. Above, the world remained unaware of the secret beneath its feet. Below, Tasha descended into a realm her father built and left for her to discover. The passage might be narrow and dark, but each step illuminated the legacy she was born to carry forward. Tasha's flashlight beam trembled as she stepped off the grated walkway into a vaulted chamber so unexpected it stole her breath. The confined tunnel had opened into a wide, high-ceilinged room carved from concrete, its walls lined with vault-like steel plates and peppered with metal conduits. A single, harsh bulb overhead flickered to life as she crossed the threshold, bathing everything in a cold, clinical glow. Her eyes raced over the scene, a bank of surveillance monitors, their screens dark but still intact, a heavy rolling cabinet stamped Archives, and a large reinforced safe door set into the far wall, its lock mechanism gleaming beneath a layer of dust. At the center of the room, a rectangular table held scattered objects, a camcorder labeled for Tasha.
Before we go any further, I have a quick question. Where in the world are you watching from tonight? Now, drop your country in the comments below, and we're always curious to see how far these videos reach. And if you're new here, welcome. Subscribe now and join the order.
In faded ink, several encrypted hard drives, and a stack of passports bound by a rubber band, each bearing her father's name alongside different nationalities. Tasha's pulse thundered. Here lay the heart of Albert Ellison's secret world, proof that the station was no mere roadside relic, but a covert CIA safehouse and communications hub. She approached the monitors and pressed a finger to the nearest power switch. They flickered, lines of static dancing across the screens before resolving into blank blue backgrounds, ready, as if waiting for reconnection. A dry cough distracted her. Turning, she noticed a battered projector tucked beside the camcorder. She lifted the tape canister, its label scrawled in her father's unmistakable hand. "Watch me when you're ready." Her breath caught as she slid the tape in. The projector clanked, then whirred, throwing flickering images onto a portable screen. The footage opened on Albert's lined face, mid-speech. "If you're watching this, Tasha, it means I trusted you with my life, and now with this." Behind this station lies more than fuel. It's a network of safe houses, communication nodes, and assets across the globe. Within the Archives cabinet are records and funds, your inheritance, and a tool for justice. Use them wisely. Her father's voice cracked with emotion. He spoke of missions in Berlin and Riyadh, of clandestine extractions where he'd risked everything to shield colleagues from explosions. He described the safe house's protocols, how to activate communications, who to call, and where to find the $200 million escrow account seeded for emergencies and restitution. Tears blurred Tasha's vision. The man she'd known as her quiet mechanic was, in truth, a field operative and burn recovery specialist. The jagged scar tracing his neck had been earned shielding 2 agents in a blast. In that moment, the weight of his sacrifice and secrecy settled on her shoulders. The tape ended, and the bulb hummed. She closed her eyes, pressing a hand to her chest where her heart thundered against her ribs. Around her, the room held its silent vigil, witness to decades of covert service. Stepping forward, Tasha opened the Archives cabinet. Drawers slid out, revealing stacks of folders labeled by date and operation, compartments of unmarked cash, and files bearing redacted names. She touched the edge of a folder marked Trafficking Network Investigation and felt a shiver of purpose. Alone in the hidden chamber, surrounded by her father's legacy, Tasha understood that inheriting this station meant inheriting his mission. The choice before her glowed as brightly as the flickering bulb, to honor his work, protect his secrets, and carry on the fight he had begun. Night had settled over the Ellison home like a suffocating blanket. Tasha sat at the kitchen table, the hidden room's revelations still pulsing in her mind. Under the soft circle of the pendant lamp, she cross-checked her father's instructions against the journal and the archives files, his coded map of safe house protocols and restitution funds. A sudden vibration on the countertop jarred her concentration. She reached for her phone. A single image sat in her inbox. The subject line read only, "We're watching." Tasha's breath caught as she tapped to open it. The photograph showed her twins asleep in their bedroom, framed through the window with unsettling clarity. In the foreground, she recognized the hood of a black SUV, its tinted windshield reflecting the streetlight. She scrolled for context, but the message contained no text, no signature, only that single image. Her pulse quickened. Every instinct screamed danger, not just to her inheritance, but to her daughters. She rose and crept down the hallway, sliding the twins' door open. Maya and Mia lay tucked beneath pink blankets, their faces serene. Tasha, heart pounding, brushed the hair from Mia's forehead and kissed Maya's cheek. Their gentle breaths were a fragile tether to normalcy. Back in the kitchen, she dialed Ivana's number on trembling fingers. The line rang twice before Ivana's calm voice answered. "Tasha." "I got a warning," Tasha said, voice unsteady. "Someone's watching the girls." Ivana paused. "Do you have their location?" "Home. I don't know who sent it." "Lock every door and window," Ivana instructed. "Stay where you are. I'm on my way." Tasha complied, sliding deadbolts into place and drawing heavy curtains. Outside, the night's hush deepened into an uneasy stillness. She checked her father's journal for any note about surveillance protocols, about alert codes or emergency contacts, but found only references to Operation Safe Haven and Protocol Blackout, none mapped to domestic threats. She stood by the front window, peering through a narrow gap. The street lay empty. The only movement was the sway of a lamppost's yellow glow. The black SUV was gone, but the memory of its rain-slicked surface lingered like an omen. Minutes stretched into eternity before Ivana's sleek, dark sedan pulled into the driveway. Ivana stepped onto the porch, her silhouette framed by the headlights. In her hand gleamed a secure issue badge, no insignia, only an eagle's silhouette. Inside, Ivana's presence felt like a lifeline. She surveyed Tasha's barricaded home with cool efficiency. "They're professionals," she said, voice low. "Your father's legacy comes with enemies." Tasha pressed her palms against the table's edge. "What now?" Ivana's eyes met hers with unwavering resolve. "We prepare, we protect, and we discover who wants this buried, starting tonight." As the twins slept upstairs, Tasha realized her fight had shifted from inheritance to survival. In the darkened kitchen, with the weight of her father's secret around her, she steeled herself for the battle ahead, one she would wage not just for the station, but for her daughter's safety and her own hard-won legacy. The sun poured through the French doors as Tasha prepared pancakes for Maya and Mia, the clatter of spatula on skillet offering a semblance of normalcy. Yet every syrup-covered plate she placed before her daughters felt like a facade. She knew Greg, her ex-husband, was likely on his way. His calls had become more insistent since the station's secret surfaced. True to form, Greg arrived in a sleek silver sedan, tie askew, briefcase in hand. His eyes raked the kitchen, first the girls' smiling faces, then Tasha's determined posture. He offered a tight-lipped grin. "Hey, sweetheart, thought I'd drop by." Tasha's smile faltered. "They're eating," she said softly, summoning warmth. "You want juice?" Greg leaned against the counter, hands folded. "I'm not here for juice." He cleared his throat. "Look, Tash, I've been thinking, with all this craziness, maybe the girls would be better with me for a while. Stability, you know?" Her pulse picked up. Every word aimed to undermine her, to exploit the turmoil. She set the girls' plates aside. "They're fine," she replied evenly. "You know I'd never let them go hungry or unsafe." He opened his briefcase, flipping to a folder labeled Custody Petition. Legal pages fluttered in his hands. "I've spoken to a lawyer. With the station's liabilities, break-ins, threats, I'm just worried. I think they'd be safer with me until you sort this out." Maya glanced up, juice dripping from her cup. Mia frowned. Tasha reached out, brushing a stray curl from Mia's cheek. She forced calm into her voice. "Greg, you know how much I love our girls, how hard I've worked for them." He leaned closer, voice softer. "I know. That's why I'm doing this, for them." His tone held false concern, but Tasha sensed the undercurrent. Control. Behind Greg's practiced facade, she saw a man desperate to regain leverage. The station's 200 million secret had made her vulnerable in his eyes, and any shift in custody could give him access. She kept her gaze steady. "I'll fight you in court if I have to," she said quietly. "But not because I want to punish you. Because they belong with me." Greg's jaw tightened. He closed the petition with a snap. "I'd think twice, Tash. You're in over your head." He tucked the folder away and turned toward the door. Before leaving, he paused and looked back. "For their sake, I hope you know what you're doing." The front door clicked shut. Silence returned, heavier than before. Tasha exhaled, pressing her palms against the cool granite countertop. The breakfast dishes waited, half-eaten and congealing. Reminders of stolen peace. That afternoon she filed a declaration in court, an outline of the threats, the hidden room, and Ivana's involvement. Each sentence felt like armor, each fact a shield against Greg's maneuvering. When she finished, Tasha sank onto the kitchen stool, exhaustion and resolve warring in her chest. Outside, the twins played in the yard, oblivious to adult battles. She watched them spiral on the swing set, their laughter a fragile promise of better days. Her father's journal lay open on the table, the next entry beckoning. Tasha closed her eyes, drawing strength from his legacy. The fight for her daughters would be as fierce as any covert operation, and she was ready. The late morning sun slanted across the cracked driveway as Tasha loaded the twins into their booster seats. Though the air smelled of honeysuckle and pine, her nerves thrummed like live wires. Every rustle of leaves or distant engine roar felt like a harbinger. She glanced at the passenger seat, where Ivana's black tactical satchel sat waiting. "Girls, be good at school," Tasha urged as Mia pressed her forehead against the window. Maya planted a small, determined kiss on her cheek. Their warmth was a counterpoint to the chill she'd felt since the first threatening photograph. Ivana slid into the driver's seat just as Tasha returned. Her posture was straight, shoulders squared, as if nothing could wobble her. She wore an impeccably tailored charcoal blazer, no badge in sight, only a slim pair of aviators tucked into her breast pocket. "Ready?" Ivana asked, voice low and composed. Tasha nodded, heart pounding. "Let's go." They wove through the sleepy streets to a nondescript strip mall where Ivana parked behind a weathered laundromat. Inside, walls of humming washers created a white noise cocoon. Ivana led Tasha to a small back office partitioned by corrugated glass. On the desk lay blueprints of the gas station, top-down schematics of the underground chambers, annotated in her father's spidery script. Beside them, photographs from various decades showed Albert Ellison in different guises, in mechanic overalls, in a CIA-issued coat, and standing beside foreign dignitaries unrecognized until now. Ivana watched as Tasha's finger traced a hidden conduit marked Emergency Comms Line, Activate via Key 042. "Your father spared no detail," Ivana said. "He planned for you to inherit both the station and its mission." Tasha swallowed. But why help me? She studied Ivana's steady gaze. Who are you, really? Ivana opened her satchel and withdrew a slim metal card. Under its ridged surface gleamed a seal, an eagle clutching arrows and olive branches. Ivana Kuznetsov, former station chief for Eastern Europe operations. Your father was my deputy. She set the card before Tasha. Tasha's breath caught. He never mentioned you. He couldn't, Ivana replied, her tone softening. Secrecy was his covenant. But when he took the burn, shielding 2 agents from that explosion in Berlin, he swore to train a successor. I thought he meant a fellow operative. Instead, he meant you. Tasha felt tears sting as she absorbed the weight of Ivana's words. Why now? Ivana gestured to the blueprints. Because someone's trying to bury his work and destroy anyone who knows of it. You'll need training, surveillance protocol, counterintelligence tactics, secure communication, and you'll need to trust me. Outside, a washer door slammed shut. Within the narrow office, the hum of machinery echoed her racing thoughts. Tasha folded her arms across her chest, drawing power from the steadfast woman before her. I trust you, she said, voice steady. Teach me. Ivana offered a small, approving nod. First lesson, how to disappear in plain sight. As they bent over the blueprints, Tasha felt the first true spark of alliance and the promise that, with guidance, she might become the guardian her father envisioned. Late afternoon light slanted through the tall windows of Ivana's training loft, an unremarkable warehouse repurposed into a covert operations studio. Dust motes danced in the beams as Tasha stood before a row of surveillance monitors, her pulse racing with anticipation. Ivana watched from across the room, arms folded, her posture unshakable. Ivana began with the basics. Situational. Awareness. Always know who's around you, what they carry, and where exits lie. She pointed to a camera feed capturing the street outside. Fold this into everyday life. Grocery runs, school drop-offs. Let vigilance become second nature. Tasha leaned closer, scanning faces and license plates. Her mind flickered back to the black SUV and the photograph threatening her daughters. She felt a surge of determination. She would protect them at any cost. Next, Ivana taught her the art of tailing and countertailing. They spilled onto a quiet side street where Ivana handed her a discreet earpiece. You'll hear my voice when I'm watching you. Your task, spot me, shadowing your route, and lose me without drawing attention. Heart pounding, Tasha climbed into the driver's seat of a rental hatchback. Ivana eased in behind the wheel of a nondescript sedan, maintaining a few car lengths distance. Tasha navigated a series of turns, past convenience stores and tree-lined boulevards, while Ivana followed precisely. Each time Ivana's sedan edged closer, Tasha countered, a sudden right turn onto a dead end, a U-turn at a well-lit gas station, a loop around a school parking lot. With each maneuver, she felt the thrill of counting steps and watching mirrors, skills once confined to video games and action movies now coursing through her veins. Within 20 minutes, Ivana's car dropped off as she turned down an alley. Returning to the loft, Tasha's legs trembled. Ivana nodded approvingly. Good. You saw me, you lost me. Next, secure communication. They huddled over a portable cipher machine, a small box of rotating discs that clicked with every turn. Ivana demonstrated encoding a message. Date, location, status. With this, you can alert allies without transmitting intelligible text. Always assume you're being monitored. Tasha punched in her first coded dispatch. Operation Safe Haven, Alpha Secure. The machine spit out a stream of letters she could later decode, even if intercepted. As dusk settled outside, Ivana introduced defensive tactics, simple disarms, use of everyday objects for protection, and the discipline of maintaining calm under pressure. Each exercise left Tasha breathless, muscles humming with awakening strength. By the end of the session, sweat beading at her hairline, Tasha looked at Ivana and felt a forging of trust deeper than words. Under Ivana's watchful gaze, she was no longer a weary waitress and single mother. She was a guardian of her father's legacy, trained in shadows to defend it. When they finally stepped into the twilight air, Tasha carried with her new confidence, an armor of knowledge that would serve her as surely as any weapon. And as she drove home, her eyes flicked to every rear-view mirror, every passerby, already vigilant in her new world. Late that night, Tasha crept back to the hidden chamber beneath the station, Ivana's lessons freshly imprinted in her mind. Every floorboard, every echo, she moved with purpose now. At the heart of the vault, nestled atop the archives cabinet, lay the camcorder and projector from the first reveal. Tonight, she would watch the message her father recorded for Tasha, the culmination of his secret life. She set the projector on the reinforced table and clicked it on. The bulb hummed, casting a pale circle of light against the blank concrete wall. With trembling fingers, she inserted the tape canister labeled in her father's hand. "To my daughter, know the truth." The flickering image resolved into Albert's familiar profile, the years of grease and worry etched into his lined face. He wore a simple collared shirt, sleeves rolled up, far from the fatigues of covert operations, but every bit the resolute man she remembered. "Tasha," he began, voice steady, yet thick with emotion. "If you're seeing this, you've already discovered Station X. You hold the key to a network built to protect the vulnerable and the means to deliver justice." Tasha's breath caught as he continued, recounting the missions she'd only glimpsed in journal entries. Clandestine relay posts in Berlin, midnight extractions in Beirut, safe houses scattered from Istanbul to Miami. He spoke of operative code names and secure channels, but most poignantly explained how he'd seeded an escrow account, over $200 million earmarked for emergency evacuations, witness protection, and victim restitution. "This isn't a fortune to spend on comforts," he warned, eyes locking with hers across decades. "It's a tool. Use it wisely to right wrongs. Trust no one who comes calling with promises you can't verify." He instructed her on the activation protocol, a series of encrypted keys in the archives drawer, a biometric lock hidden beneath the service bay, and the emergency comms line that would connect her directly to headquarters should she choose to involve them. Tears blurred Tasha's vision. "Know that I chose you because you carry our family's heart," Albert said, voice softening. "Your strength, your compassion. I saw it in you before you knew it in yourself. I believe in you." When the tape ended, the projector bulb dimmed, leaving the chamber in near darkness. Tasha pressed a hand to her chest, heart pounding with both grief and resolve. Her father's legacy wasn't merely a station or a bank account. It was a living mission of protection and justice. She rose, gathering the camcorder and unspooling the reels like sacred relics. Ivana's training had armed her with skills, but this testament imbued her with purpose. The room's cold walls felt charged, alive with the promise of their combined futures. Clutching the camcorder to her chest, Tasha whispered, "I won't fail you, Dad." As she ascended the spiraling stairs back toward the ordinary world, each step rang with renewed determination. The $200 million secret was more than a revelation. It was her inheritance of duty, and she would honor it with every breath. Early morning light filtered through the cracked windows of Ellison Service Station as Tasha arrived to survey the grounds. The pumps lay silent under dew-speckled concrete, but today, every glint of steel and droplet of oil felt charged with tension. In the distance, she spotted two sleek black SUVs idling by the forecourt, Simone's unmistakable designer silhouette standing beside them, phone pressed to her ear. Tasha's heart thudded as she pulled into the lot. Simone hung up and strode forward, stilettos clicking sharply against gravel. Behind her, Darrell emerged from the second SUV, a young lawyer trailing with a manila folder. The lawyer's expression was practiced, sympathetic yet resolute, a perfect instrument for delivering bad news. "Good morning, Tash," Simone called, voice too bright. She fluttered a perfectly manicured hand toward the station. "We thought we'd meet you here, where the real work happens." Tasha squared her shoulders. "What are you doing here?" Simone's blue eyes glittered. "We've been approached by some very interested parties. They're offering an all-cash, no questions asked buyout. $300 million, no strings attached." Shock cracked through Tasha's chest. She glanced at Darrell, whose tailored suit seemed to swallow him in corporate comfort. He folded his arms, voice cool. "We've retained counsel to finalize the purchase agreement. We need your signature." Tasha's stomach twisted. Rage flared beneath the ache of disbelief. "You'd sell Dad's station after everything we've uncovered?" Simone's smile slipped. "We're not selling your inheritance. We're protecting our interests. You and your clandestine projects. We can't afford liability." Darrell stepped forward, opening the folder. He withdrew a stack of documents, titles, NDA forms, release waivers. "Sign here to transfer the property and indemnify us against any future claims. Consider the girls' college funds secured." Memories of childhood laughter in her father's workshop washed over Tasha. The evenings he'd patiently teach her spark plugs, the stories he'd whispered about courage and sacrifice. To her siblings, it was a business transaction. To her, it was a covenant of honor. She shook her head, voice firm. "My father entrusted me with this, for a reason. I won't betray his legacy for money." Simone's lips thinned. "Then you'll be left alone to deal with threats, liabilities, and your ex-husband's custody battle. We wash our hands of this." A silence settled like a thundercloud. Simone and Darrell retreated, closing the SUV's doors with clinical precision. The lawyer gave Tasha a final, pitying look before slipping behind Simone's tinted windows. Left alone on the station's cracked asphalt, Tasha pressed a hand to her chest, feeling the weight of both betrayal and conviction. This was no longer just about preserving a family relic. It was about preserving her father's mission. She stepped forward, key in hand, and unlocked the office door. Inside, the hidden chamber's entrance waited. Her true inheritance. As she descended into the underground passage, she vowed that no amount of greed or guile would deter her. Her fight was just beginning. The morning air was crisp as Tasha backed her sedan into the school drop-off zone. Maya and Mia chattered about book reports and playground games, their laughter a fragile counterpoint to the knot in her chest. She forced a smile, reminding herself that weekdays still needed a veneer of normalcy, at least until the threats to her daughters became impossible to ignore. A dark sedan idled at the curb beyond the yellow safety line. Its windows were tinted too dark to see inside. And when Tasha glanced up, the front passenger door creaked open halfway, as if someone inside debated whether to stay hidden or step into view. She shook off the unease and opened her door. "Be good today," she told her girls, planting a kiss on each forehead. Maya slipped out first, backpack bouncing, then Mia followed. As Tasha watched them walk toward the schoolhouse, the sedan's engine rumbled to life. From the rearview mirror, she caught sight of a figure inside, a silhouette of a man twisting a camera lens toward her children. Her breath caught like a shutter snapping closed. That evening, when the girls recounted their day over mac and cheese, Mia's voice trembled. "Mommy, There was a man taking pictures of me by the school gate. Maya nodded, eyes wide. He had a flashlight, but it was daytime. A wave of panic surged through Tasha. She set down her spoon and held both their small hands. "Did you see his face?" she whispered. They shook their heads. "Just a black car." Her own training flooded back, the tailing exercises with Ivana, the importance of watching mirrors and rear window checks. But those lessons had been for spying on grown-ups. Now her babies were in danger. When bedtime came, Tasha tucked them in, lingering at the door. Their room was a fortress of pink and lavender. Stuffed animals lined the shelves, paper doll dresses clipped to a sunlit window. She pressed a finger to the light switch, plunging the space into darkness, and imagined an intruder stepping across the threshold. The image jolted her heart into a furious gallop. Back in her own room, Tasha called Ivana. "They were photographed today," she said, voice tight. "They're targets now." Ivana's calm crackled through the line. "You need to secure their routine. Change pickup times, routes, variations they won't notice but will throw off anyone watching." Within the hour, Ivana arrived with a portable GPS jammer and 2 signal-scrambling phone pouches. She demonstrated how to swap license plates on Tasha's sedan, old plates she'd requisitioned from her father's archives stash, and reprogrammed the girls' school buzzer code. By nightfall, Tasha felt a hardened resolve settle in her bones. She had inherited no mere gas station, but the burden of safeguarding her father's legacy, and now her daughters' lives. As she watched Maya and Mia sleep beneath a sky of glow-in-the-dark stars, she vowed that no threat, no betrayal, would ever break their circle of safety. The real fight, she understood, was to protect the innocent, and she would not fail. A pale wash of dawn light crept across the gravel lot as Tasha arrived at the station, Ivana beside her in stealthy black gear. The air held a chill, even as cicadas stirred in the nearby pines. Tasha gripped the brass key in her pocket, every nerve humming with anticipation. From beneath the service bay's overhang, 2 dark-suited figures emerged, men in black pressed trousers and earpieces, hands resting on concealed holsters. Their approach was deliberate, silent as predators. Behind them, a 3rd man circled near the office door, testing the lock with a slender tool. Ivana's low whisper cut through Tasha's tension. "They're professionals, mercenaries or rogue agents. Do exactly as we trained." Tasha exhaled, recalling each lesson: situational awareness, use of cover, non-lethal disarm. She edged toward the central pump island, positioning herself so the men's line of sight would pass her, but not her partner. Ivana melted into shadow. The first mercenary swept his gaze across the lot. Tasha met his stare briefly, then lowered her eyes, an invitation for him to reveal his hand. He signaled to the second man, who stepped forward. "You Ellison?" he called, voice flat. Tasha straightened, voice calm. "I am." He reached inside his jacket. Tasha tensed. Gun or camera? But instead of drawing a weapon, he produced a business card. "Acquisition team, confidential purchase." Her heart stuttered. "I'm not interested." He shrugged. "Your siblings signed off. We have orders to secure the asset." Ivana slipped from the shadows, hand raised in a non-threatening salute. Not today. At her signal, 2 concealed floodlights lining the bay roared to life, baking the lot in bright white light. The men blinked, momentarily disoriented. In that instant, Ivana swept forward, disarming the closest man with a wrist lock practiced until fluid, forcing him to the ground. The second man reached for his holster, only to find an empty draw. Ivana had tampered with their gear weeks ago. Tasha advanced, voice steady yet firm. "Leave now, or we call the sheriff." A harsh laugh escaped the lead mercenary's lips. "This is bigger than county law." Tasha squared her shoulders, recalling her father's creed. Protect the station. Protect the mission. Then you'll answer to higher authority. They hesitated, uncertain whether to risk escalation. Ivana locked the second man's arm behind his back in a single motion. Their leader spat a curse, then nodded curtly. Within seconds, they melted back into the shadows, retreating to their unmarked vans parked just off the lot. Tasha watched until their taillights vanished down the gravel road. Ivana exhaled heavily, offering Tasha a small, proud smile. Well handled. Tasha's chest heaved. She placed a hand on the keyed hatch entrance. He won't try again. Ivana shook her head. He might, but now they know you're not a woman to be pushed around. As the sun peaked above the tree line, bathing the station in golden light, Tasha felt a surge of triumph and a steely readiness. She had defended her inheritance with skill and courage. Tomorrow, the fight would continue. But today, she had won. Tasha sat before the archives cabinet, its drawers still ajar from the confrontation. Dawn light filtered through the vents, casting harsh lines across folders emblazoned with operation code names. Chercheuse. Her fingers hovered over a file stamped Operation Iron Dawn, Portugal, 1987. But it was the smaller folder tucked behind it, marked Project Nightingale, that held her father's deepest secret. She drew it out with reverence. Within lay detailed reports. Surveillance photographs of trucks unloading women at isolated docks. Intercepted communications between traffickers and corrupt officials. And, most crucially, a ledger of financial transactions documenting how her father diverted illicit funds to rescue operations. Each page told of payments negotiated to free captives, safe houses established along the Balkan route, and identities erased for those fleeing to safety. Tears pricked Tasha's eyes as she read the personal notes her father had scrawled in the margins. Maria, age 19, released Zahara, age 16. Relocate to Lisbon's safe house, and risk high, must trust only Agent Blue. The gravity of his work weighed on her, a clandestine crusade against unspeakable cruelty executed in the shadows so no one would ever know. She remembered the trembling urgency in Ivana's voice when she first spoke of human trafficking networks. Now, faced with these files, Tasha understood her father's true inheritance, a legacy not of secrecy alone, but of tangible compassion and justice. A sudden click behind her made Tasha spin. Ivana stood at the doorway, silhouette firm against the chamber's dim light. "You found it," she said softly, "the real purpose of the funds." Tasha exhaled, shutting the folder but not letting go of its message. "It wasn't just about money," she whispered. "He built this station as a hub for rescue." Ivana stepped beside her, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "He saved lives, hundreds, maybe thousands, and he funded every operation personally." Together, they arranged the most critical documents into a secure portfolio. Tasha noted contacts her father had listed, local advocates in Georgia, unmarked P.O. boxes for survivors' families, and coded emergency protocols still valid. With each page, the station's value transcended bricks and pumps. It became a bulwark against injustice. Closing the archives cabinet, Tasha felt a surge of purpose. The money in escrow was not a windfall, but a trust. To rebuild safe houses, to support survivors, and to pursue traffickers still at large. She envisioned the station's forecourt not as a business front, but as the first step on a journey to freedom for those who had none. As they ascended back to the service bay, Tasha spoke with calm conviction. "We'll honor his work. We'll continue Project Nightingale." Ivana nodded. "And you'll lead." Outside, the morning sun burned away the shadows. Tasha inhaled the damp scent of pine and gasoline, feeling the pulse of her father's legacy in her veins. The station was more than an inheritance. It was a promise, and with the files secured and allies at her side, she would ensure that promise endured. Late afternoon light slanted through the station's stained glass, turned dusty window, painting fractured rainbows over the concrete floor. Tasha stood before the archives cabinet, its metal surface warm beneath her palm. Behind her, Ivana watched with solemn patience as she weighed the ledger of missions and the encrypted bank transfer codes. Two paths lay before her: walk away with 200 million in silent inheritance, shielding her daughters from danger, or expose the trafficking network and use every cent to pursue justice for the survivors. Her mind flew back to the first time she held her father's brass key, the promise of discovery, the thrill of hidden rooms. Yet the gravest revelation had come not in blueprints or bank balances, but in the Project Nightingale files, names of young women rescued from bondage, letters of thanks from survivors living under new identities, photographs of tearful reunions in nameless safe houses. Each file carried a human face, stories of suffering turned to hope by her father's sacrifice. A sudden trill from her phone jarred the moment. A news alert scrolled across the screen. Local official arrested in trafficking sting. The sting had been funded by someone. The only link she could trace was an untraceable account seeded 3 decades ago. If she activated those funds now, more operations could launch immediately. If she didn't, the network would regroup, survivors would remain in limbo, and her father's legacy would lie dormant. Maya's laughter drifted up from the yard, echoes of innocence echoing in the dusty bay. Tasha closed her eyes, picturing her daughters chasing fireflies at dusk, unaware of the shadows lurking beyond the tree line. A part of her wanted to protect them by withdrawing entirely, sell the station, liquidate the accounts, and vanish into a quiet life where only she and the twins mattered. Ivana cleared her throat softly. The statutes will shield you. Immunity for whistleblowers. You can bring in the DOJ, partner with NGOs. You won't be alone. Tasha opened her eyes, catching her own reflection in the monitor's blank screen, determined, unyielding. She thought of Simone and Daryl, consumed by greed, Greg scheming for custody, the mercenaries bent on silencing her. All of them sought to reduce her father's life to dollars and power. But in that battered room, surrounded by maps of covert corridors and fragile files, Tasha felt a fierce clarity. This inheritance was never meant to line her pockets alone. She reached for the secure handset mounted on the wall, its receiver heavy with coded frequencies. With practiced fingers, she dialed the first of her father's emergency contacts, reciting the activation phrase, "Nightingale to Iron Dawn, proceed to Alpha." Ivana exhaled, her expression softening. It begins. Tasha pressed the receiver to her ear, voice steady. This is Ellison. Funds are clear for Operation Nightingale. We proceed at dawn. As the line clicked, the station's quiet hum seemed to swell with purpose. Outside, the pine needles glittered in the dying light, and somewhere beyond the trees, a safe house door unlocked for a woman seeking freedom. In that pivotal moment, Tasha chose justice over comfort and stepped fully into the mission her father had entrusted to her. Midday sunlight poured through the courthouse's tall windows, illuminating the hushed assembly of local officials, journalists, and curious townspeople. Tasha stood at the podium, her hands steady despite the weight of every gaze upon her. Behind her, a projector screen glowed with the Ellison station's faded facade, and beside it, a long table bore folders and photographs pulled straight from the archives. The mayor cleared his throat. Ms. Ellison has asked for this special session to address matters of grave importance. Let us hear her out. Tasha inhaled, recalling the first time she unlocked the hidden hatch, the dusty corridors of Station X, and her father's final message. She began in a calm, measured voice. 3 decades ago, My father built this gas station as more than a business. He created a network of safe houses, communication nodes, and an escrow fund of $200 million, all to rescue victims of human trafficking and to bring criminals to justice. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A reporter raised a hand. "Are you saying this station was a CIA safe house?" She nodded. "Yes, and today I'm presenting irrefutable evidence." With a click, the projector flicked to life, displaying grainy photographs of traffickers' trucks, maps of Balkan smuggling routes, and lists of rescued individuals, names, ages, dates of liberation. She stepped aside as Ivana advanced, laying out ledger pages showing the financial trail from her father's covert account to nonprofit legal entities fighting trafficking. A hush fell. Citizens stared, mouths agape. The mayor's jaw loosened as he scanned the documents. This is extraordinary," he whispered to his aide. Tasha pressed on. "These files represent lives saved, hundreds of children and adults who would otherwise remain in bondage. The money my father set aside is meant to continue this work, here in our community and beyond." She paused, voice quivering as she addressed the families in the room. "If you or someone you know has been a victim of trafficking, we will help. No stigma, no questions that compromise your safety, only support, resources, and the promise of protection." Hand trembling, she laid down her final document, a signed memorandum transferring control. Of the restitution fund to a coalition of local NGOs, law enforcement task forces, and survivor-led advocacy groups. "I invite you all to join me in this mission," she said, her gaze sweeping the room. "Together, we can honor my father's legacy and transform this station into a beacon of hope." For a moment, silence reigned. Then the room erupted. Applause, staccato camera shutters, and the mayor rising to embrace her. Neighbors who once whispered about the junk station now surged forward, eager to volunteer, donate, and learn more. As Tasha descended the steps, flanked by Ivana and the mayor, she felt tears of relief and pride. The station's future was no longer her solitary burden. It belonged to the entire town. And in that bright, hopeful clamor, she realized her father's work had already begun to change the world. 6 months had passed since Tasha Ellison's public unveiling. The Ellison Memorial Center stood proud where the old gas pumps once sputtered, a gleaming community hub with a small fueling station at its edge, but more importantly, a survivor resource clinic, partnership offices for anti-trafficking groups, and a memorial garden blooming with native wildflowers. On ribbon-cutting day, the early morning air carried the scent of honeysuckle and freshly poured concrete. Volunteers in matching polo shirts stood ready to guide visitors, while local dignitaries gathered beneath a banner reading Ellison Memorial Center, Fueling Hope, Driving Justice. Tasha, dressed in a tailored navy blazer and denim skirt, clutched a pair of oversized scissors as her daughters, Maya and Maya, perched at her side in flower girl dresses. The mayor stepped forward, his voice warm. What was once a forgotten corner of rural Georgia is now a beacon of compassion because of one woman's courage. He gestured to Tasha, and the crowd erupted in applause. Maya and Mia beamed as their mother raised the ribbon. With a ceremonial snip, Tasha severed the ribbon. Confetti fluttered like colorful petals. She turned to embrace her daughters, feeling the solid weight of purpose beneath her fingertips. No longer a solitary fight, but a shared mission that spanned communities and borders. Inside, the center buzzed with life. A counselor conferred quietly in a sunlight-dappled office. A translator led a survivor in filling out paperwork. A small filing room, built above the original archives vault, housed the ongoing case files maintained under Ivana's guidance. The cafe served free coffee and pastries each morning, staffed by trainees who had once been far from safe. Tasha walked the halls, pausing at a bronze plaque honoring her father's work. In loving memory of Albert J. Ellison, mechanic, operative, protector. Beneath his name, carved initials of every rescued individual formed a subtle mosaic, reminding visitors that every life mattered. Outside, Ivana joined Tasha by the memorial garden. "You've honored him," Ivana said softly, finger tracing a petal on a sculpted steel flower. "And you've surpassed even his wildest hopes." Tasha smiled, eyes bright. "We did it together." She looked toward the horizon where the original station pumps stood repainted, symbols of transformation. This is just the beginning. As the sun climbed higher, local school children streamed in for tours, their laughter echoing against the center's walls. Maya tugged at her mother's hand. "Can we help, Mommy?" "Tons," Tasha replied, ruffling her hair. "There's always work to be done." Standing between her daughters and her steadfast ally, Tasha felt the full embrace of legacy and community. The Ellison Memorial Center was more than a monument. It was a living promise, fueled by justice and hope, ready to drive change for generations to come.